In the golden age of Saturday mornings, Rankin/Bass filled living rooms with stop-motion wonders and painted worlds of magic. But while Rudolph and Frosty became immortal, countless others faded into shadows. What happened to the lost Rankin-Bass cartoons of the 60s and 70s? Let's unearth 15 forgotten treasures that once sparked imaginations, only to vanish into memory. The King Kong Show, 1966. When Rankin-Bass introduced the King Kong Show in 1966, it was groundbreaking, the first animated series based on the iconic movie Monster. Produced in partnership with Japan's Toei Animation, it marked one of the earliest East-West collaborations in television history. Unlike the terrifying beast that terrorized New York in 1933, Rankin-Bass reimagined Kong as a hero, allied with a human family, the Bond family, who fought villains, robots, and other monsters alongside him. For children of the era, the appeal was enormous. The show made Kong less frightening and more of a Saturday morning protector, a bold departure from his cinematic image. The animation style reflected Toei's early anime influence, blending Japanese design with Rankin-Bass's Western storytelling. Each episode mixed monster battles with moral lessons, packaging Kong as both exciting and approachable. Yet critics weren't impressed. They dismissed the plots as repetitive and the animation as stiff compared to Hanna-Barbera's slicker output. Still, the King Kong Show left an indelible mark. Toho Studios was so intrigued they borrowed elements for their live-action film King Kong Escapes, 1967. The series also influenced later portrayals of Kong as more sympathetic than monstrous. Why is it forgotten today? Limited syndication, few preserved prints, and its overshadowing by Rankin/Bass's Christmas specials ensured it faded into obscurity. For fans, it remains a fascinating what-if moment, when the most famous giant monster in cinema briefly became a children's cartoon hero. The Smokey Bear Show, 1969. Few mascots are as iconic as Smokey Bear, the stern yet gentle ranger who reminded Americans only you can prevent forest fires. By 1969, Smokey was a household name thanks to posters and PSA ads. Rankin-Bass, working with the U.S. Forest Service and sponsor American Broadcasting Company, launched the Smokey Bear Show as a way to expand the message into a Saturday morning cartoon. On paper, it was a natural fit. Kids loved cartoons, and Smokey was already beloved. The series featured Smokey and his animal friends teaching environmental stewardship while battling careless campers, greedy loggers, or villains who endangered the forest. The show attempted to weave action, humor, and moral lessons together, presenting Smokey not only as a mascot, but as a protector and teacher. But reality proved difficult. The animation quality was modest, and its heavy-handed messaging often made episodes feel like extended PSAS. Children craved adventure and comedy, and while Smokey delivered wisdom, he lacked the zany antics of Scooby-Doo or the futuristic excitement of the Jetsons. As a result, the series struggled in ratings and lasted only a short time, disappearing from schedules by 1971. Still, the Smokey Bear Show has a legacy worth remembering. It was one of the earliest attempts to blend children's entertainment with environmental advocacy, decades before green media became mainstream. Today, surviving footage is scarce, tucked away in archives and the memories of older viewers. It's a reminder of a time when cartoons weren't just for laughs, they carried the weight of public responsibility. The Reluctant Dragon and Mr. Toad Show, 1970. Rankin-Bass attempted something ambitious in 1970, The Reluctant Dragon and Mr. Toad Show. The idea was to pair Kenneth Grahame's timeless characters from The Wind in the Willows with the gentle, poetry-loving dragon from Kenneth Grahame's short story, The Reluctant Dragon. It was a bold mashup, hoping to merge two literary classics into one Saturday morning package. The show opened with promise. The Reluctant Dragon was quirky, humorous, and a sharp contrast to fire-breathing depictions of dragons in popular culture. Mr. Toad and his companions added familiar British charm with their eccentric adventures along the riverbank. Rankin/Bass leaned into storybook visuals with softer colors and slower pacing compared to the zippy animation of Hanna-Barbera's lineup. Unfortunately, that same charm worked against it. Children accustomed to mystery-solving teens or slapstick animals found the pacing sluggish and confusing. The blend of two separate literary worlds didn't resonate with younger viewers, and the humor was often too dry for Saturday morning audiences. Meanwhile, critics compared it unfavorably to Disney's earlier adaptations of Graham's works. The series lasted a single season before being quietly pulled. Unlike Rudolph or Frosty, there were no annual re-airings to keep it alive in cultural memory. Today, it stands as a symbol of Rankin/Bass's willingness to experiment, even if the experiment failed. The reluctant dragon, a creature too peaceful for his time slot, became forgotten not because he lacked charm, but because he didn't fit the noisy, fast-paced world of children's television. The Tom Foolery Show, 1970. In 1970, Rankin Bass teamed with British writer and artist Edward Lear's whimsical nonsense poetry to create the Tom Foolery Show. It was unlike anything else airing on Saturday mornings, a surreal mix of animated sketches, riddles, rhymes, and characters lifted directly from Lear's works. This was not a traditional cartoon series with ongoing plots or recurring heroes. Instead, it played like a variety show for children, dripping with absurd humor and dreamlike visuals. At first glance, it seemed too strange to succeed, and indeed, audiences didn't quite know what to make of it. While the show featured colorful animation and a lively cast of characters, the humor was dry and often more suited to adults who appreciated wordplay and satire. Kids, on the other hand, wanted slapstick and speed, not limericks and nonsense verses. Rankin/Bass hoped the Tom Foolery Show would carve out a niche, appealing to families that valued literary humor. Instead, ratings were dismal, and the show lasted only one season. But behind the scenes, animators found it a rare creative outlet, allowing them to push beyond formulaic scripts and indulge in stylistic experiments. Though forgotten, its influence lingers. Later, cult shows like Monty Python's Flying Circus or Pee-wee's Playhouse echoed its absurdist DNA. The Tom Foolery Show may have flopped with its intended audience, but it remains a daring experiment, proof that Rankin/Bass wasn't afraid to try something bizarre and different. The Jackson 5-5, 1971. When Motown mania swept the globe in the late 60s and early 70s, Rankin Bass saw an opportunity. Bring pop culture's most beloved young group, the Jackson 5, into the world of Saturday morning animation. The result was the Jackson 5, a colorful, music-driven series that combined the band's hit songs with wacky adventures. Unlike many of their productions, Rankin/Bass outsourced animation to British studio Halas and Bachelor, known for its fluid style. Each episode featured slapstick escapades, light-hearted storylines, and at least one performance segment showcasing Jackson 5 hits like A BC or I'll Be There. The show functioned like a cross between a cartoon sitcom and a pop music video showcase. Initially, the series was a success. Children loved the music, and Michael Jackson's animated alter ego became an early symbol of his rising stardom. However, it faced limitations. The real Jacksons did not voice themselves. Professional voice actors stood in, which some fans considered a disappointment. Over time, as the group's real-world fame skyrocketed, the cartoon seemed quaint and unnecessary. The series ran for 2 seasons before fading, overshadowed by the band's live performances and television specials. Today, it feels like a time capsule, capturing both the innocence of Saturday morning cartoons and the cultural power of Motown. While often forgotten in Rankin Bass's canon, it remains one of the earliest examples of music meets animation synergy that paved the way for later shows like Jem or Josie and the Pussycats. Festival of Family Classics, 1972. By 1972, Rankin Bass had found fame with holiday specials, but they aimed higher with Festival of Family Classics. Instead of focusing on Christmas or Easter, this anthology series adapted classic tales from literature, The Last of the Mohicans, 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, The Jungle Book, and more, into half-hour animated episodes. It was an ambitious project to bring timeless literature to young viewers in an accessible format. Each episode promised an adventure into beloved books narrated with a sense of grandeur. The animation, handled by Japanese partner Topcraft, which would later evolve into Studio Ghibli, gave the series a distinctive international look, blending Western character designs with Eastern artistic flourishes. Yet, despite its noble intentions, the show struggled. Many stories were condensed so heavily they lost their emotional depth. Children found the adaptations overly serious compared to the comedic antics of Scooby-Doo or Fat Albert. Critics applauded the effort but noted the lack of spark that made other Rankin Bass productions memorable. Still, the series has historical importance. It demonstrated Rankin/Bass's belief in animation as a tool for education, not just entertainment. And though it only ran a single season, it hinted at what was possible when East-West animation collaborations brought literature to life. Today, it sits in obscurity, remembered mostly by those who caught its brief run, a forgotten bridge between fairy tale holiday specials and more ambitious global storytelling. Kid Power, 1972. In 1972, Rankin Bass adapted a syndicated comic strip called We Pals by Maury Turner into a Saturday morning cartoon titled Kid Power. At the time, the strip was groundbreaking. It was the first nationally syndicated comic to feature an integrated cast of children, reflecting America's growing diversity during the Civil Rights era. Rankin/Bass took that concept and turned it into an animated ensemble about kids forming a Kid Power Club to solve problems in their community. The series was warm-hearted and idealistic. Each episode tackled themes like teamwork, tolerance, and respect, with characters from different racial and cultural backgrounds working together. For children in the early 70s, it was one of the few shows that even attempted to reflect the diversity of real life. But that ambition was also its undoing. Unlike the zany hijinks of Scooby-Doo or Looney Tunes, Kid Power often felt more educational than entertaining. Its messages were noble, but the pacing was slow and the humor lacked bite. Many young viewers tuned out in favor of flashier shows with monsters, mysteries, and slapstick comedy. The show lasted only one season before being canceled, quietly buried under stronger competition. Yet its legacy should not be underestimated. Kid Power represented one of Rankin/Bass's boldest attempts to align Saturday morning cartoons with real social change. Forgotten today, it remains a small but meaningful footnote in the evolution of children's programming toward inclusivity. The Osmonds, 1972, riding the wave of the Jackson 5's success, Rankin Bass tried once again to blend pop stardom with cartoons, this time with the Osmonds, the clean-cut family band from Utah. Premiering in 1972, the show followed Donnie, Marie, and their siblings on globe-trotting adventures that combined music numbers with comical escapades. Unlike the Jackson 5, this series actually had involvement from the real Osmonds, lending a degree of authenticity. Each episode featured songs from the band's repertoire, animated performances, and light-hearted storylines involving travel and cultural encounters. The show tried to balance wholesome family values with the glitter of early 70s pop stardom. Initially, the concept seemed foolproof. After all, the Osmonds were topping charts with hits like One Bad Apple and were teen idols of their day. But the series was hampered by weak scripts and uninspired humor. Animation was outsourced to Hollis and Batchelor again, but production values lagged behind other Saturday morning heavyweights. The Osmonds' fame also worked against the cartoon. As the band performed constantly on television specials, live concerts, and variety shows, the animated version felt redundant. Viewers simply didn't need a cartoon when the real Osmonds were everywhere. The show ended after a single season. slipping into obscurity as quickly as it arrived. Today, it's a curiosity, proof that even mega fame couldn't guarantee cartoon immortality. The Red Baron, 1972. In one of their strangest departures, Rankin Bass launched The Red Baron in 1972, a cartoon inspired not by history's infamous World War I pilot, but by a popular toy line and comic book reinterpretation. Here, the Red Baron wasn't a German ace, but a heroic figure piloting his biplane through bizarre, surreal adventures. It was a peculiar mix of fantasy, slapstick, and aerial battles. The show had a psychedelic flair, clearly borrowing from the counterculture aesthetics of the early 70s. The animation leaned heavily on bold colors and wild design choices, making it stand out visually from other shows of its time. Kids fascinated by flying machines and zany humor were supposed to be the target audience. But the Red Baron never found traction. It was overshadowed by stronger, better-branded competitors, and parents were puzzled by the idea of rebranding a historical war figure into a children's hero. Even more damaging, the writing lacked consistency. Episodes alternated between lighthearted cartoon antics and confusing, surreal storytelling that left young viewers disengaged. The series was canceled quickly and forgotten almost immediately, preserved only in fragments by nostalgic collectors. Still, its existence underscores Rankin/Bass's willingness to take risks, even if it meant trying to spin war history into Saturday morning absurdity. Today, it feels like a relic of experimentation when nothing was too odd to attempt. The Coneheads, 1977. Long before Saturday Night Live characters became box office staples, Rankin/Bass took a risk by animating the Coneheads, the bizarre, pointy-headed aliens created by Dan Aykroyd and Jane Curtin. In 1977, the studio developed the Coneheads pilot special, hoping to capitalize on SNL's skyrocketing popularity and America's fascination with sci-fi after Star Wars. The Coneheads' peculiar humor, rooted in their awkward assimilation into suburban America, was translated into a zany animated format. The cartoon leaned into surreal gags about misunderstood Earth customs, misused slang, and endless platters of fried eggs and beer, the Coneheads' favorite snacks. Rankin/Bass infused the project with their signature colorful style, but with a sharper edge than their family-friendly fare. Yet, despite the strong brand recognition, the project faltered. NBC hesitated to greenlight a full series, worried that the adult satire wouldn't translate well to Saturday morning audiences. The pilot aired once in syndication, but never gained traction, becoming a curious footnote in Rankin/Bass history. Today, it survives only in low-quality recordings passed between collectors, a tantalizing glimpse at what might have been. If it had succeeded, Rankin/Bass might have pioneered the adult animation boom decades before The Simpsons. Instead, the Coneheads cartoon became a forgotten experiment, stranded between satire and children's comedy. The Hobbit, 1977. Though often overshadowed by Peter Jackson's epic films, Rankin/Bass's The Hobbit was, for many, the first animated window into Tolkien's Middle-earth. Premiering as a TV movie in 1977, it was not a flop. Millions watched it, but it has since faded into obscurity, remembered mostly by hardcore animation fans and Tolkien purists. Produced with Japan's Topcraft studio, later part of Studio Ghibli, The Hobbit featured distinctive hand-drawn designs, watercolor backdrops, and eerie, otherworldly music. While the pacing compressed Tolkien's novel into a brisk 77 minutes, it captured key moments: Bilbo's riddles with Gollum, Smaug's fiery menace, and the Battle of the Five Armies. Reception was divided. Some critics praised its artistry and educational potential, while others found its rushed storytelling unsatisfying. Fans of the novel often complained that beloved details were cut or altered. Still, for a generation of children, it was their first encounter with Tolkien's world. Why is it forgotten? In part because Jackson's 21st century films eclipsed it, rendering the Rankin/Bass version quaint by comparison. Additionally, its rights were tangled in legal disputes, limiting re-releases. Today, it stands as a strange, haunting artifact, a Tolkien adaptation filtered through the Rankin/Bass lens, blending Japanese artistry with American television sensibilities. The Flight of Dragons, 1982. Technically arriving just outside the 70s, this Rankin-based TV movie deserves mention for how quickly it slipped into obscurity despite its ambition. The Flight of Dragons, inspired by Peter Dickinson's scientific fantasy book and Gordon R. Dickson's novel The Dragon and the George, premiered in 1982. It sought to blend speculative science with fantasy, explaining how dragons might really exist by using natural laws like air chemistry and hollow bones. The story followed a modern man transported into a medieval fantasy realm, forced to embody a dragon to stop the evil sorcerer Osmonds. The voice cast was stellar: John Ritter, James Earl Jones, and Harry Morgan, and the animation, once again done with Topcraft, had lush fantasy imagery. Critics admired its ambition, but lamented its uneven pacing. For children, the pseudo-scientific explanations felt heavy-handed, while adults found the fantasy tropes familiar. The special aired only once in primetime and was rarely rebroadcast. Without annual holiday reruns like Rudolph or Frosty, it quickly disappeared from mainstream memory. For fans, though, The Flight of Dragons is a cult treasure. Its VHS and DVD releases are scarce, fueling nostalgia among those who stumbled upon it in childhood. It reflects Rankin/Bass's willingness to push beyond holiday cheer into more complex storytelling, even if the audience wasn't quite ready. The Last Dinosaur, 1977. In the late 1970s, Rankin-Bass took a bold step away from holiday cheer and family-friendly whimsy into darker, pulp-inspired territory. The Last Dinosaur, a TV movie co-produced with Japan's Tsuburaya Productions, aired in 1977 and shocked audiences with its tone. Instead of a gentle children's tale, it was an adventure thriller about a wealthy big-game hunter who discovers a hidden prehistoric world. The story centered on Maston Thrust Jr., a grizzled oil tycoon who funds an expedition into a volcanic crater. What the team discovers is chilling: a land untouched by time, still ruled by dinosaurs. The titular Last Dinosaur, a Tyrannosaurus, becomes Thrust's ultimate challenge. Unlike Rankin/Bass's Christmas specials, this wasn't light-hearted. It was violent, moody, and even tragic, showing characters struggling to survive against nature itself. The animation sequences, combined with live-action suitmation effects from Tsuburaya, gave the film a hybrid, surreal quality. Dinosaurs were depicted with lumbering menace, not cartoon charm. For children expecting Rudolph's warmth, the grim tone was startling. Critics called it uneven, unsure whether it was intended for kids or adults. After its single broadcast, it largely vanished, remembered only by cult fans of kaiju and fantasy adventure. Today, The Last Dinosaur stands as one of Rankin-Bass's strangest experiments, proof they weren't afraid to wander into the shadows, even if the world wasn't ready to follow. The Life and Adventures of Santa Claus, 1985. Though technically airing just after the 1970s, this Rankin-based special deserves recognition because it never received the same immortality as Rudolph or Frosty. Based on L. Frank Baum's novel, The Life and Adventures of Santa Claus was their most ambitious attempt to reframe a holiday legend as mythic fantasy. Instead of the jolly old man at the North Pole, this Santa began as an orphan raised by immortals in the mystical forest of Burzee. The story explored his coming of age, his battles against evil creatures called Aguas, and his eventual transformation into the giver of gifts. The stop-motion animation by Rankin/Bass's Japanese collaborators at Topcraft was breathtaking, more elaborate than their earlier specials. Yet audiences were bewildered. The darker epic tone felt more like Tolkien than Christmas cheer. The story's heavy themes of mortality, sacrifice, and the Council of Immortals deciding Santa's fate were far removed from jingling sleigh bells. While critics admired the artistry, Children found it too solemn, and networks declined to rerun it annually. Today, it's a forgotten masterpiece, trapped in the shadow of lighter fare. For those who rediscover it, the special feels almost prophetic, foreshadowing the rise of darker holiday stories in modern cinema. It is Santa Claus not as cartoon mascot, but as mythic hero. These forgotten cartoons reveal their daring experiments, their failures, and their hidden brilliance. Which one do you remember, or wish you could see again? Comment below, subscribe for more lost treasures, and keep the nostalgia alive.